Welcome to Couch Chronicles, Therapist
Hello,
After Dark. I'm Judalyn.
I'm Tyler.
And I'm Stephanie.
All right, so we are here at CBC, ladies.
Yes,
Are
we are.
excited?
Yes.
All right, we are three therapists with three different perspectives, and we are bringing the couch to you. Instead of being on the couch, we believe that therapy is something that can happen outside of the couch. We talk about some real topics. We get real, we get dirty, we get fun, and we get nasty, but we get good. All right. So, what are we talking about today, Steph?
So, in this episode, because we are here at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, we are going to be discussing how policy changes impact mental health, particularly in the Black community.
Yeah.
These aren't just policy shifts that happen on paper. They determine who gets access, how quickly they get that access,
Yeah.
and what kind of support is available. So we're going to be breaking down what's changing, why it matters, and the real impact for both providers like ourselves as well as the people that we serve. So let's get started.
Get
Yeah,
started.
get
We're
into
excited,
it.
y'all. We're
I am
excited.
excited for sure.
Yes.
Okay, so why does policy even really matter for mental health, access, and equity?
Well, everybody need access. That's the point. Like mental health is important. Mental health policies is important because we all need access to mental health. A lot of times people think of like when they think of health wise, it's usually about like a physical doctor.
Yeah.
And I feel like mental health is on the bottom of the totem pole. So I think it's important that we have policies that only not focus on the body, but focus also on the mind
Sure.
and be accessible to communities and people like us because the Black body,
So I'm hearing that the
Need
policies are really important for us to be able to provide have access to care,
Yeah.
not even just the care, but also access to people that are able to get education, get licensed, and provide
Exactly.
services. There's
Yeah.
simply not enough Black clinicians. I think there's like 9% Black
Yes.
clinicians.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's helpful. Policy can definitely be helpful in that realm for sure.
And policy is good for funding too.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
funding in
Yes.
communities and things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that like we're living in a time where the cost of living is increasing, which
Yeah.
like correlates with financial stress increasing,
Yeah.
and then basic needs become harder to get.
Yeah.
And so as those things become scarcer,
Yeah.
then the mental and emotional strain also is inevitable, right?
Exactly.
And so these
Agreed.
policy changes are really affecting low to middle class folks,
Yeah.
like who can't afford these services without the financial stress just expanding and being more and more of a strain.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
access is even more important and maybe the difference between life and death. It's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
that serious.
Yeah, so you're
Agreed.
talking about some more general policy changes that have impacted people's access to basic needs,
Yeah.
care. What about some policies that are specifically impacting mental health access and services?
You talking about in terms of telehealth services?
Sure, telehealth services, expansion, Medicaid, Medicare reform.
Well, I think with the COVID has opened the realm for telehealth services.
Sure.
And I feel it opened the realm for mental health to be accessible. I feel like you guys, we noticed that's when our field really boomed.
Yeah.
That's when our business really boomed because it was a dark time, I think, within our country. But it also was also a good thing because it also made therapy accessible
Yeah.
to a community and a population that wouldn't have it accessible.
Yeah.
People who had transportation issues can now access therapy from their home,
Yeah.
whether it's through audio services, whether it's through, like you said, through the telehealth, if they have a phone or computer.
Sure.
So I think that's really good. But also, I think with Medicaid and the way that it has changed around the reimbursement,
Sure.
because there was a high reimbursement during COVID. New
That
administration
has
is
changed.
changing now,
Sure.
but at the same time that because more clinicians were open to accepting Medicaid so we can serve people that look like us or that relates to our story. But also now with the change, which is why we're talking about what we're talking about, less clinicians like ourselves and even like programs are not taking Medicaid because
Sure.
the reimbursement rate has decreased.
Sure.
Yeah.
I definitely think a lot of the policy changes, like the Big
Yeah.
Beautiful Bill Act, that impacts the cuts to Medicaid, which
Yeah.
does impact some of the populations that we see that have that type of insurance. I would say that some of the other policies also impact, or just even changes with like restructuring of federal agencies,
Yeah.
has impacted people's access to healthcare, period.
Yeah.
So that could be
Agreed.
commercial insurance, federal insurance. People have changed, are not having as much insurance. there's a high population of people that are also unemployed,
Right.
and that impacts people's ability
Especially
to
now.
get services as well.
And also, we've seen it. I think we could talk. We talked about it having influx of people who either used to have insurance or pay out of pocket, but now because of
Yeah.
the employment loss, they can't afford
Yeah.
to pay out of pocket, or because they lost their insurance, they can afford to continue therapy. And usually, therapy is the first thing to go when people gotta think about their medical
Exactly.
health and compared to like their mental health. They're gonna drop that first, unfortunately.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it does kind of feel more like mental health is a luxury. And
it's
that's
really
something
not.
that we're always wanting to work towards in our policy as well. How
Yeah.
can mental health be more accessible and more of
Yeah.
a necessity for sure?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really not.
What are your thoughts, or what are some things that you all are seeing with your clients right now with all the shifts in policies and changes, people experiencing unemployment?
I think not only do you see folks experiencing more like stress as things are getting cut off, like for example,
Absolutely.
a lot of programs that gave people like SNAP or like cash money to be able to deal with shortages that
Yeah.
their paycheck wasn't going to be able to cover,
Mhm.
right? And so with those benefits being stripped or the money being given out to folks decreasing, that is also impacting the things people can be a part of or
Sure.
participate in. And I'm also thinking about like if there are cuts to things like mobile crisis,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Or some of these other supplementary resources
Interventions and
that
crisis
are
interventions.
around,
Yeah.
then it puts a lot more pressure on the nuclear home,
Yeah.
which was already having some challenges
Yeah,
being
yeah.
able to withstand like
For sure.
day-to-day things, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like when I look at the fact that certain things are being cut and reduced, it's forcing folks to lean on other resources
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
that they have in reach, but also aren't necessarily equipped
Right.
to handle the additional pressures and demands of these folks.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's
Right.
true.
So if I'm going to, for example, my doctor, I might maybe start telling them about some of the mental health challenges that I'm dealing with, or the fact that my medication is not being covered
Right.
to the same degree that it might have been before, which is then affecting my quality of life in general.
Yeah.
That's putting a lot of pressure on that medical
That
provider
system, yeah.
to be able to do more things that are outside of what their scope. Really.
Exactly. But also, like, even the trauma within itself. I think
For
even
sure.
with clients who are working with, if they lose their job, you are doing good work with them, but now the treatment has changed
Yeah.
Sure.
to cater to if somebody's like livelihood, the basic needs cannot be met. It's hard to kind of do the other work that needs to
Sure.
be met.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
I think what's happening now in the changes, like to the unemployment you're talking about, I also think it's a trauma within itself
Sure.
for people in our community,
Sure,
but
that scarcity of
also who
security,
not,
yeah.
And it's,
Yeah.
it's definitely kind of giving us a look into what non-death loss looks
Sure.
like, and
Yeah.
the ways in which that it can really impact
And we
you,
talked
right?
about
Just
that, yeah.
because like you haven't necessarily lost like a person per se, or people will say, well, it's just a job.
Yeah.
If I have been working at a job for 15
Exactly.
20 years and I
Yeah.
had literally created my end of life planning around the security that this
Yes.
job gives me, and that's now stripped away from
Sure.
me.
Exactly.
I'm now having to recalculate and relook at what is the purpose of my life, who am I, what do I add, and all of those different things at a time that wasn't of my choosing, right?
Yeah.
So there's a
Yeah.
lot of kind of willfulness and a lot of just sadness around the uncertainty that has now just been placed upon us.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Exactly.
Agreed.
What are your thoughts about what we can do as clinicians or even as community members, our responsibilities as grassroots organizations, churches, and family members to fill policy gaps that we're maybe having right now?
Well, a lot of clinicians don't know, and I know it's annoying because they be collecting the money, right? But APA also has like a forum that they do, and they
Yeah.
have people who advocate for policy change in mental health. Also, Maryland, the counseling board,
Maryland Counseling Association, yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
they also, if you're a member of that, you could sit on the board, you can have a voice, you can let them know every every quarterly, the Maryland Board Licensing,
Yeah.
they have a Zoom call that for clinicians, especially to discuss like what are some barriers that they're having with treatment, how interventions is not covered, what are they forced to do.
Right.
So the more of our voice, I think they hear. Because we're live in vivo, like we're the one who actually are the one doing the work. Then I think if clinicians get more active and advocate that way, then I think we'll make more of an impact.
Yeah, reaching out to your local legislators about mental health policies, mental health law, and remembering that policy impacts us from the top down.
Yes.
So from the top, our clients, the people that we care for, all the
Yep.
way to us as clinicians, how
Yeah.
people are able to get access to education, access to licensure, funding
Exactly.
for those things.
Exactly.
Graduate school is not cheap, right?
sure
And so being able to look at how it impacts us at every segment, we can perhaps do some more work as clinicians to get active, but also leaning more on our collectivist agenda. What does
Yes.
it look like for us to lean into community for healing
Yeah.
True.
and
Yeah.
looking at more services in that way? Therapy
Yeah.
doesn't always have to take place in the clinical setting.
Yeah.
Also, as clinicians, I think something that's like a plus, we could do, yes, we're therapists, but we could be resourceful too.
For sure.
A lot of the
For sure.
time, I know we do it naturally.
Yeah.
We are case managers and we are also
Yeah.
like clinicians. So I think as therapists, we could also equip clients to know there's resources that are out
There
there.
are.
There's pro bono therapy that can happen. I know for my practice, I do 1 or 2 pro bono sessions with clients. So just also making ourselves accessible. Because I know, our life is not,
Sure. If it's not a
but-
session, if it's
Yeah.
maybe more of a group
group,
setting or even
a
more of a
support.
forum like this one, to be able to
Exactly.
talk about what it is we need and how we all can come together.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think about is that you had mentioned like some of these third spaces, like, grassroots or maybe, church organizations, like how can they also fill the gap? So let me just be clear, right? These spaces can only do so much to fill the gap that the policies have stripped away.
Sure.
However, they can potentially stop the hemorrhaging or the bleeding that is happening, right? So you
Yeah.
can serve as safe and welcoming places
Yes.
for, displaced members. You could also provide resources, right? Like, as we said, since certain supplementary projects and things are being put on hold because they don't have funding.
Yeah.
Things like food pantries are going to be really important.
For
Things
sure.
like clothing drives are going to be
For
really
sure.
important.
For sure.
Even childcare, right? Having a place that kids can be dropped off after school, right? Because a lot of programs that might have helped with compensating or helping families with child care credits, those things
Yeah.
are being, taken away.
Yeah.
I also think about the increase in kind of like even in the pastoral space, right?
Yes.
Expanding
The
the
churches.
ways in which that you are servicing and reaching to the communities, and it might actually require you shifting a little bit of the ways in which that you usually open your doors to these people, maybe even advertise yourself to folks, because
I could speak more in the church. What I've noticed a difference is like even with my church, I think a lot of churches now are trying to do what we're talking about.
Yeah, having
Because
more
they are
discussions
like,
about
if
it.
you have members who, like myself, who is a licensed clinician, they
Yes.
are offering, like they're asking you to come in and do some volunteer work or
Yeah.
do some
Sure.
group stuff. I think that's really good. I'm really proud of the churches because they are stepping up.
Mhm.
Also, I feel like there's a less biases that churches are doing now. It doesn't matter like what your practice or don't practice, belief or not believe in. Like having the food pantry, making resources accessible, and they're also giving money to help people.
Yeah.
Especially now during this time, people lose their job and then people's housing and can't meet their mortgages. Some of these churches are really stepping up
Yeah.
Yeah.
and and helping.
And we also have
communities.
I would say, the benefit of living in, DC area where I would
Facts.
say the agenda and the community priority is a
Yeah.
little bit
It's different,
higher
yeah.
here.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And I would
Agreed.
even then say for folks who are feeling like they don't have that outlet and they don't have those spaces, really looking for maybe online, communities that could provide you
And that's
a
a
little
new thing
bit
too. That's
of
really big.
guidance. But I like
Yeah.
the thing that you said of like church members who have certain
status or
specialties or
specialties.
things
Yeah.
in which that they
Mhm.
already do or they hold certain titles, maybe stepping up and being
Yeah.
able to provide some assistance in those areas
Yeah.
that aren't being closed off at the
Yeah,
time.
big up to my church, Union Church. They be stepping up. I gotta say,
I'm definitely
they got a whole
hearing
mental health.
that we're talking more about meeting people's basic needs to
Yeah.
really help out with their mental health.
Yes.
That also really brings up the point that we always talk about around our podcast
Yeah.
is that a lot of the mental health issues that people are experiencing are systemic.
Yeah.
So having less financial pressure, having less food scarcity, having less challenges around safety
Yeah.
ultimately helps people's mental health
Yeah.
and also makes our jobs easier as clinicians. I'm not going to
Agreed.
lie, it's been hard. It's been feeling like sometimes offering people coping skills or even holding the space is all I have to give. And
Yeah.
sometimes there's a feeling of hopelessness in that, knowing that there needs to be some drastic change happening. So with that being said,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Talk about that feeling as clinicians with
Yeah.
hopelessness, right? Because I've been experiencing that a lot
Yeah.
lately as well.
Yeah.
And how do you cope with it?
Honestly, I have to have my own self-care routine because I
Yeah.
think that I also have to be okay with and accept that I can only offer what it is that I offer.
Yeah.
I am diligent about trying to get people to connect to resources,
Mhm.
coming to conferences like this one, and connecting to people that could perhaps support
Yeah.
clients that I maybe have in the future.
Agreed.
Networking with people that can maybe make some connections.
Agreed.
But it can be hard.
It
It
is.
can be hard, and
Yeah.
I've definitely felt like more recently it's been a bit more pressure. But I would advise clinicians to not steer away from identifying with those systemic and political pressures that our clients are under right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think we're often taught in grad school to be a blank slate.
Right.
Yeah.
But in reality, mental health and social change is political. There's
It
no way
is.
around that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I think another thing that we could suggest to folks, right, is for those Black clinicians, right, that are feeling the extra sting of your community being abandoned or feeling like neglected because these policies are in ways directly affecting the
Sure.
Black community, directly affecting, you know, your family members or people that you know. It is really important, like you said, to take some time to self-care, to self-soothe, to disconnect, to be able to take some rest from advocacy, to take some
Sure.
rest from being able to be in service, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not something that we need to channel 100% of the time, even though we are in a segment of history where it feels like you need to be on all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think that as one of the things that I have been sharing and telling like my supervisees that I supervise as well as my clients is that you just kind of got to take it day by day and give yourself grace and almost buckle down a
Do what
little
you
bit
can.
because this is just the beginning of waves that we're going to
Yeah.
continue
Yeah.
to be impacted by. And if you are capsized or literally overwhelmed in the first few waves,
Yeah.
you're gonna have
You
some
can
struggles.
tread water a little bit.
Yes.
Try to catch your breath. Try to
Yes.
get your balance.
Definitely.
Okay, so with all of that being said, what is one policy change? If we could make that tomorrow, what would that be that can maybe most significantly impact the mental health of Black communities?
I think we all should answer it together.
Free
Mental health should be
services.
free. Okay.
Just again,
Free
for those
mental health
people who
services.
didn't hear that, free mental
Mental
health
health
services.
services.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and free does not necessarily mean not paying the clinicians, right?
Right.
But I think that is often a challenge or the dialectical tension there, right?
Yes.
Like we want to be able to provide accessible services,
Yeah.
and also I want to be able to meet my own basic needs as well, right?
Agreed.
And
And
also,
so-
to be clear, I think that not only is it free mental health services, but quality.
Probably,
You know,
Yes.
ones
That's a
that
good one.
actually
That's a good one.
meet the needs of the population
Yeah.
in which that you're servicing. So I know one of the things that we talked about is that we feel like culturally affirming therapy services
Yes.
would be very important. And you might be like, well, what does that mean, culturally affirming therapy services? So I know for me, working with my Black clients with Black bodies, our bodies hold a lot of trauma.
Sure.
We are
Some
definitely
that's ours, some that's generational.
Yes.
Exactly.
like we're a resilient folk, but we are resilient because we're often told to push forward,
Sure.
to keep moving, keep calm, get
Yep.
over it. It is what it is. And even though that is something that has been beneficial to us in the past,
For survival,
it
right?
definitely weathers and breaks down at the psyche and at the core of who we are. And so I'm a big proponent of being able to release that trauma, that pain, that tiredness and exhaustion. And that's not always something that can be done through the avenue of talk therapy.
Of talk
Right.
therapy
And
or
so-
any regular cycle.
And some of
Sure.
the regular psychotherapies of CBT or person-centered or some of these other therapies that are usually practiced. And so I think about like somatic interventions that really work on the body and that mind connection and the way of being able to release things that show up versus the numbing that happens in the Black community,
Yes.
the distracting that happens in the Black community. I think you've also talked
Yeah.
about some other Afro.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
if
some
you're
indigenous
talking about,
practices.
yeah, so if you have into psychotherapy, insurance don't cover that because
Right.
it takes a longer it's more than 60 minutes and you need
Right.
a lot of, and that's the thing with some of the specialty interventions like EMDR, even DBT,
Yes,
IFS and
like
IFS,
all
all
those.
these things, you need more than 60 or 45 minutes
Right.
because it requires a lot of work with you in the clients, the
Yeah.
somatic purposes, the processing
Mhm.
that has to happen.
You take
can't
them there
process
to the
it.
trauma,
And then
then
you
also have
gotta
to bring them
ground
back down.
and bring
Yeah.
them back.
Yeah.
So those things are not covered by insurance. And it's crazy because we run a program for dialectical behavior therapy, but we are the one only medicated funded program that is run.
And nearly,
So it's not even accessible because if you look at a modality like DBT, it's about $5,000 out of pocket.
Yeah,
To,
yeah.
that.
to even
The
what's
average
it called,
person
do the
can-
certification,
Yeah.
let alone the
The
hundreds
service
of
itself is
dollars.
$2,500 per session, depending how you go
Where
in.
you
Like,
are,
yeah,
yeah.
so a lot of people can't afford that. So even making these things accessible, like the quality you talk about, making these things accessible and having, being able to pay for that type of
Yeah.
intervention and
Those
theoretical framework
resources, those,
for people to get it, because not just any therapy work for us.
So
Yes.
I'm hearing that the policy change that we're looking for is care that is free,
Yeah,
accessible,
Yeah.
and
Quality.
inclusive of indigenous practices, ones that allow us to connect to body,
Yes.
connect to spirit, perhaps also including more communal aspects where we're coming together for that healing,
Yeah.
that co-regulation versus more individual
Yes.
type of services. I'm
Okay.
also hearing that we're looking for policies that impact how insurance works, right?
Yes.
Like
Exactly.
not perhaps policies that help us to expand the way that insurance even looks at mental health. A lot of insurance companies look at mental health as an additional thing. It's not something that is
a
often
requirement
included or
part of your
required.
whole
Yeah,
life.
yeah. So
Yeah, for
with
sure.
that requirement, also having services that expand beyond that 45-minute, that 60-minute, that family session, but ones that can really include practices that really can get people out of their heads, out of their trauma, centering their lives, and really back into their bodies and be really reconnecting to themselves.
Because
Yes.
if you really think about the Black body, it is the first thing we disconnect ourselves with. So
Sure.
don't think about how amazed do we get when we're processing with clients and they're like, well, this happened and that happened and that happened, and all of us go, well, how did your body experience that? They're like,
don't know.
well, what do you mean?
Right.
I mean,
I don't have any
I don't have any
sensation.
sensation. And
Or when you ask them
giving them
how they're
language.
feeling, they
Yeah.
often respond with a thought,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Instead of like, because we're used to processing things on a
Exactly.
cognitive level, but not through our
Exactly.
body, because again, the generational trauma robbed us of that connection, right? Because in
Exactly.
order for us to survive, the years of slavery and the debilitation that happened in the Black community in the 90s, and through was it Reagan era, was it
Yes.
Nixon era, that whole
One of
era,
them, Colonel
we
Maya.
had to divorce ourselves from our bodies in order to survive and in order
Sure.
to keep pushing. And so being able to reconnect and be resettled in the
Sure.
body is part of the healing that has been overlooked for us for a very, very long time.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Well,
Agreed.
I'm happy that we've been able to have this conversation and
Me
perhaps
too.
be a part of the changes that are to come.
Exactly.
Always making ourselves accessible for
Yes.
experiences like these and to our clients.
Yeah.
We
agreed.
are truly made for this
We
moment.
are made
Yes.
for this
Yes,
moment. We are.
Yes, mental health policy isn't abstract. It's about power. It's about who gets care, who and how we progress in our communities.
Mhm.
If we use our power to share policies, we can drive progress in mental health and make it accessible, affordable, and make healing acceptable for all.
Ready?
mental health is both mental health is both social and political issue. There's no way
Exactly.
around it.
That
Yeah.
And
part.
policies really determine our access, affordability, and equity.
Exactly.
So policy is personal,
It's
progress
It is.
is possible, and together we are made for this moment.
Okay,
Thank you.
ladies, this has been really
Yes.
good.
Yes,
We want to thank CBC for having us
Yes.
and for choosing us and giving us this platform.
Absolutely.
And again, you can find us on YouTube. We are Couch Chronicles, Therapists After Dark.
Yes.
You could follow us on IG at Couch Chronicles LLC.
Yes.
What else did I?
Oh,
miss?
and we have a segment on our podcast regularly where you can send in listener letters or confessions.
Yep.
So you can reach us at couchchroniclestad@gmail.com if you want us to read any of your letters or just want to check in with us.
And one last time, we are Couch Chronicles, Therapists After Dark. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you.
Bye.